and recorded on the 9th of June. Now, out of our 4 invited Icelanders, only 2 were able to make it, but we invited a couple of extras because we knew that due to locality connections might be difficult, and indeed they were. Now, the situation is that the Pirate Party of Iceland has been doing extraordinarily well in the polls recently, and the Pirate Unicorn chat has gathered to find out what the hell was going on. They have been consistently polling between 8 and 11% since the elections in 2013. However, the numbers started to climb in February this year and have sharply increased to the current 34.1%. This makes them the strongest party in the country, well ahead of the 2 government parties. Now, many people have been speculating over the cause. Their basic policies like transparency, direct democracy, and fighting corruption are indeed a big factor. In fact, this is in contrast, they point out, to other pirate parties who concentrate on the pirate core policies like copyright, patent reform, and other IT-related things. Now, while these are important, they say, it's not really relevant to most of the voters who are more worried about their current pay and job security. Protest voting is another factor, but there are other parties in Iceland that could also attract these protest votes. So there has to be something that the pirates are doing that's not really been identified. Previous Icelandic parties in history have had similar successes and meteoric rises in the polls, but they have quickly fallen away. And another problem is the demographic that draws a pirate vote, being a younger one to some extent, is one that tends not to vote on polling day. However, there's a recent academic study that puts the pirates as an outrider in this trend, and basically claiming that the pirates should see lasting success in the polls leading up to the elections. And not only are they getting better in their polls at the moment, their membership numbers are also rising rapidly as well, from 1,000 at the beginning of the year to 1,700, and more are applying. Now, the party is working hard to make sure that all those who wish to be active in the party have the opportunities to do so, but this is a burden for party officials who are just struggling to keep up at the moment. This growth is also having an effect on the elected members in Parliament and the City Council. So every time a new poll result comes in, they're inundated by the press for requests for explanations, which are met with astonishment by the Pirate Party representatives, because usually that's the first they've heard of it. We have to remember that these representatives are pulling 16-hour days at the moment, and it's all a bit much. PPIS keep expecting numbers to go down again, but they don't. So, another factor in the government, which we go back to protest votes, is the fact that the current government has been handling government badly. They are evasive with the public's questions, and they are basically being pretty corrupt in the way they're handling things. As contrast with the pirates, who have been painstakingly transparent, and that's with all things positive and negative. There have been some mistakes made, and they've owned up to them. However, the press, and especially the right-wing press, has been attacking the pirates, one paper accusing them of being the poorest at attending the parliamentary committee meetings in the Alþingi. And this is true. Statistics back it up. However, with only 3 MPs, and the fact that the meetings are often held concurrently, so you've got 2, 3 or 4 meetings all happening at the same time, the pirates have no chance of attending them all. And this story was so blatantly out of order that the leader of another party in the Alþingi spoke up and said how wrong it was. In another case, a minister accused the pirates of being associated with organised crime. Quite straight-faced, and as proof, well, they're called pirates, what do you expect? Now, the pirate leadership is basically on tenterhooks now, as any misstep will be pounced on by the right-wing press. That's the sort of price of popularity. There came a question from the Pirate of the Unicorn all of the Pirate Unicorn chatters, and that was, are there enough volunteers in the party to handle this extra workload? And our Icelandic pirates just said no, no way. Of course, this applies to all pirate parties, are always short of volunteers and people to do things, but here the situation is acute. Now, it's not that there's so much of a lack of willing people in the party, but it's resources to actually get them engaged. So it's both financial and knowledge. It was announced also today, was rather surprised, there was a special meeting of Parliament, and that's to debate a bill on the easing of capital controls. We know now this passed with a resounding, almost unanimous vote. And there came the question, well, if this works and the economy improves, will the government be hoping that the populace will just forget all the shenanigans and elect them in at the next election? Our pirates pointed out that the fact their promises in the last election were so unrealistic, it's very unlikely that the voters would be getting a mass attack of selective amnesia. The government is just riding roughshod over democratic and parliamentary processes, such as the withdrawal from the accession talks to the EU without going to Parliament as they should, and the sort of basically the handing over of the resources of the country as fishing resources are being parceled out to people without any sort of recompense, so that the country itself is not benefiting from its own commons. And another thing that points this out is the fact that Prime Minister himself, his popularity is now well under 10% and falling. So what of the future for the Pirate Party of Iceland? Well, currently 3 people are doing secretarial work. That's basically by hand. And it's at a part-time basis. They also have to work full-time for their livings, and they're just not able to keep up with the work that's required. Another thing is that they're relying on donations. They don't have a party registration fee, but they're relying on donations from people who are basically under severe financial strain, and it's a bit unrealistic to expect the sort of money they need to come by that way. And by law, they can't get help from foreigners unless it's the few foreigners who live in Iceland and have been living there long enough to qualify for the right to vote. It's not only administrative work that's a problem, they need to work on policies. They've got to be able to present themselves as a credible party for government in 2 years' time. And they also have to develop processes for the new MPs. It looks like 24 at the moment. So 21 of them would be brand new and would need to be trained on how to do the new job. And they've not even yet been able to consider who they might go into coalition with. The only thing that even comes close to that is they said they will support any good idea from any party. However, they could say right now that working with either of the 2 current government parties just would not be possible, considering the damage they've done to the country up to now. Now, one thing they could do when they come into government is to push through the ratification of the famous crowdsourced Icelandic constitution, which the current government has just put on ice. It should have ratified it by now, but they just can't be bothered. It's not to their benefit. The party would put a few minor amendments in it, and they would make some changes to parliamentary procedure. That's about the rules of parliament and also some rules about the general election. I know that they were talking about lowering the threshold from 5% to 2%. Now, if the new constitution was ratified, this automatically means that there would be a recess of parliament and new elections would be called. This would also be a strain on the Pirate Party, but at least they would have had something done which the people have been waiting for a long time. Another interesting thing is there's a call from one of the government MPs for an all-woman parliament for 2 years up to 2017 to sort out the country's problems. I'm a bit cynical about this, and it looks like the government is trying to direct public attention away from what they're currently up to. But our pirates reacted with doubt that that would happen, but they say it's not the worst idea they've heard. And it's quite possible in the near future that an all-woman one-day parliament might be possible in the Althingi. Now, another thing could happen is the government decided to throw it all in and resign, or the president himself could dismiss parliament. Now, if the president dismissed parliament, that would mean elections would have to be called within 45 days. This would be disaster for the pirates. On the other side, it's unlikely the government itself would resign, as one of those parties would be all but wiped out. However, if it happened, they are just totally unprepared, and they would just, as they said, panic. That said, they weren't really prepared for the last two elections they were successful in, so who knows. But definitely 2015 would not be possible. They could be ready in 2016, but they would have to be working night and day to get ready. Now, can the world help? That's the question, and we mentioned this in the last podcast. And the plan is afoot for the pirates of the world to assist PPIS by setting up a think tank, which would indeed employ some full-paid staff in Iceland. Now, these people would not be able to work directly for PPIS, but they would be able to work on policies that PPIS would need, and some other things that would be of benefit to the Icelandic pirates, like these processes, because they can be seen as a generic thing rather than just specifically to the Icelandic situation. So there would this think tank would focus on policies and philosophies that haven't really been tackled by pirates up to now. That is basically not related to information technology. Another thing is that the staff would be able to volunteer their free time for administrative work, and no doubt they could use some of the resources of the think tank without getting into trouble with the rather strict Icelandic laws. Another thing was pointed out that once in government, parties' policy development tends to slow down. Now, a think tank would ameliorate this problem, as the Pirate Party of Iceland would be facing a really new situation, and ongoing political development would be a necessary thing. Now, this means we need two streams of funding to help the Pirate Party of Iceland, and one is inside the country, and that's for the Icelanders to work out. They will need to sort out how they do that. That's up to them. But what we can do on the outside is look at how we could fund the think tank, and we rather like the idea of people subscribing a small amount each month, and this would then go to supporting the think tank and indirectly the Pirate Party of Iceland. So this means that anyone who wants to see a pirate-led government in Iceland is going to be able to contribute relatively soon. But it's not only pirates who would benefit. There would be the full implementation of the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, which basically the government should be putting into effect at the moment, but they haven't, because of course it's not to their benefit. However, Iceland, even though it's still one of the best places for data storage, it's rather hard to get to find lawyers who are basically willing to take the ISPs to court. People who support whistleblowers would be interested, because Edward Snowden would certainly be made a citizen by special act of Parliament, pursuant to that being, of course, that he would be agreeable to that, but that is certainly a policy of the party. And then finally, for anyone planning a trip to Iceland in the next few weeks, be aware that a general strike was planned. However, this seems to have dissipated, and it is not quite sure if it's just postponed or completely off the table, but everyone seems to think it will not go ahead, at least as a complete general strike. There will be some strikes happening, but basically was about the basic wage in Iceland, and that looks like it's going up. So that was the podcast for this week. We will be having an open chat on Sunday with no special guests or anything like that, so come along.